Welcome to May. Yesterday was my last day of school, so it's officially summer, which hopefully means that I will be reading more. Um, but I actually read, I guess technically, 8 books this month, but it's kind of complicated, so I'll explain. But I'll just start in order, and then when we hit an anomaly, I will explain what happened with the anomaly. So, first book that I finished was 5 Good Minutes of Mindfulness by Jeffrey Brantley and Wendy Millstine. It was just like 99 of these little short 5 minute, I guess you could call them meditations. Um, I gave it 3 stars because, um, well, mostly just because it's really hard to meditate and read at the same time. Or at least to do it in the way that I think is what meditation is. I really struggle with meditation in general. I'm not sure I'm doing it right. So adding in the idea of reading at the same time was really a lot. But it had some good stuff. Some of them were like for specific times of day, like coming home from work or in the morning, and I always read it before bed, so I wasn't getting exactly 100% out of what I was supposed to get, but good. Good thing to read before bed. Good. Um, the next thing I read, which is where my first anomaly is, was this abridged version of Les Mis by Victor Hugo. So when I was little, I used to go through my dad's childhood bedroom and steal books of his that I thought maybe one day I would want to read. And so when I was young, stole this copy of Les Mis and thought, yeah, I want to read that because I'm going to be a teacher when I grow up, and you have to read Les Mis if you're going to be a teacher. Well, little did I know that this was the abridged version, um, and that the unabridged version is a hefty, hefty book. Um, I have it. I'm currently reading it. I'm on page 38 of like 1400. So that'll be down the line. I am not including this in my review this month because it was so stupendously amazing that I have to read the whole thing before I can tell you how stupendously amazing it was. So stay tuned for Les Mis because it was fantastic. Um, okay. The next book I read, I started reading it probably 2 or 3 years ago, and then I lost it, and then I refound it, so I just finished reading it. It's The Fall by Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan. It is the sequel to The Strain, which was made into a TV show. I think it was on FX. Yeah. Um, Gosh, probably like 2017-ish. Um, I can't remember what I gave The Strain. It was a good book. It's vampires. It's spooky vampires. Um, and it's a group of survivors of the vampire apocalypse trying to defeat the vampires or at least fight back against the vampires. So the first book is basically like the beginning, like New York City is falling. The second book was they've pretty much taken over, and now it's like how to survive. I gave it 3 stars. I'm not sure if that's super fair. It was very well written. Um, I wish that I had read the book before I finished the series, because I think part of the reason I gave it a 3 was because I already knew what was going to happen because this book was covered in the series. So I'm not entirely sure it was the most fair rating that I've ever given. It was a good book. It was fun to read. It was well written. It was even, for a vampire book, well researched, which I know seems like an anomaly because vampires aren't real. But it was good. Maybe closer to 4 stars, if I'm being more fair. There is a third book called The Night Eternal, and I will be reading it at some point. It is in the stacks of books to be read. The next book I read is still at school. It's another kind of anomaly. I started it a couple months ago, um, reading it at school. It was kind of like a devotional. It was not a religious book by any means, but it was for educators. It's called For All You Do, and it is by Peter Mishler, and it was just little tidbits about the day in and day out life of a teacher, and some affirmations to try to make the hard days easier. Um, I gave it 4 stars, uh, because it was it was a good book. It was nice. It had good sentiment. It was just very short. Um, Reading one entry a day, I got through it in like a month and a half, so less than 100 pages. Um, but yeah, it was good. It got me through the end of the year, and it did a good job. Um, the next book I read is another one I started at the beginning of the year. It's called 180 Days of Self-Care for Busy Educators by Tina H. Boogren. And it had kind of like a self-care idea per week. So some weeks, like a week could be journaling or getting outside or just different ways of taking care of yourself throughout the year, depending on what point in the year we were at during the school year. Because we all know that there are some points of the year that are a little bit more exhausting than other points of the year. I gave it 5 stars because it did not ask too much of me. All of the things were things that I could incorporate into my daily life, without too much struggle. Um, and I kept up with it because I wanted to keep up with it. Like, it kept me coming back every week, which is something that not a lot of books can do when you're at school in knee deep in the thick of it. But every week I would read they call them invitations, my invitation of what I was supposed to do that week, and I would try to incorporate it into my life. And some of them are things that I will continue to incorporate, and some of them are things that I am going to not do, which I guess that's how self-care is for everybody. But yeah, it was good. Part of me kind of wants to read it again next year, even though I've already read it, but I feel like it could be a good reminder on taking care of yourself throughout the year. So it might be a do-over. The next book I read was for our June book club. It is called Zombie by Joyce Carol Oates. So the book club is a horror book club for crazy people like me who like scary stuff. This was a short read. It was, I don't even know if I can say loosely based on Jeffrey Dahmer. So this idea of creating a zombie, who will love you no matter what because you've lobotomized them to not have the choice of loving you or not. It was disturbing, because Jeffrey Dahmer is disturbing. The kid's name wasn't Jeffrey Dahmer. It was written in 95, I want to say. So just right after he had been killed in prison. Um, but it's pretty much Dahmer. Uh, I mean, if you know the story of Jeffrey Dahmer, you will read this and you'll be like, yeah, I've heard this before. I gave it 3 stars. It was written in an interesting way. It was kind of like he's writing it almost like a diary entries, uh, and he's you can see him getting deeper and deeper into the fascination of creating a zombie. It's like he starts out and learns that you could give someone a lobotomy with an ice pick, and then he takes it step by step further into that wormhole. And yeah, it's disturbing. There are some icky parts, I would say. So if you're not somebody who could watch the Dahmer series, I guess that would be like a good way of deciding if this book is for you. If the Dahmer series made you uncomfortable, this will make you uncomfortable. Um, yeah, it was good. Much better than last month's book choice. So, 3 stars. And lastly, I read, because I'm a teacher and I teach it, To Kill a Mockingbird for the, I think I counted, and it would be the 13th time all the way through. I did study some of it in college, but so it's pretty regular that I read it. I got my first copy for my 10th birthday from my dad. It was a 40th anniversary edition. I still have it, and but I don't take it to school because I don't want kids messing with my stuff. But obviously, it's 5 stars for me. Um, there's not much to not like about To Kill a Mockingbird. It somehow gets better every time I read it. Uh, I relate to different characters as I get older. Of course, when I was younger, I related to Scout. And then as I get older, I can relate to Atticus, though I will never live up to being Atticus levels of a human because he is like a saint. Um, but in addition to reading To Kill a Mockingbird, I started taking a continuing education course in February through Facing History and Ourselves, which is um, a site that is dedicated to teaching history that is sometimes considered uncomfortable. They focus a lot on like the Holocaust and things like that, and tying it into like justice today. So how we've changed and how we haven't changed and things like that. So when I was taking the class, I bought the companion version, which is called Teaching Mockingbird, and I followed along with it while I was taking the course. And luckily, I got to teach Mockingbird as I was finishing the course. So while I didn't get to use everything from this guide because it was close to the end of the year and I had to kind of go into crunch time, I got to use a lot of the stuff that I had learned from my course. So the cool thing about Facing History and Ourselves is that they take the book To Kill a Mockingbird, you read it, and throughout on the website and also in here, they have primary resources and documents from people who lived through the Great Depression. They have different documentaries that you can tie into it, and throughout the entire thing, they have an overarching essential question, which is how are our morals developed? So, from the beginning of the unit until the end of the unit, you're thinking about yourself, how your morals developed from childhood to now, and you're also thinking about Scout and how her morals developed. And I did end up reading the whole thing. It was fantastic. I can't wait to teach it the whole way through when I have more time next year. It had great resources. It's easy to follow. The only reason I gave it 4 stars was because I wish it had been written linearly in a linear fashion. So for example, like some of the resources are at the very back, and I kind of wish it had been like chapter 1, here's all the stuff used for chapter 1, chapter 2, here's all the stuff used for chapter 2. That is the literal only complaint that I have. Was just it kind of bounced around from resource to method, resource to method. Fantastic book. It is produced by the people of Facing History and Ourselves. And if you teach, they're mostly geared towards history. They have some English stuff. But if you teach a liberal art of some sort, I would definitely consider checking them out, especially with the way the world is going as far as book banning is concerned. Um, it is very cool. Florida would probably not like this book. Like, if Florida had just one giant opinion, it would probably be do not recommend. But that's even more reason why you should check it out, because Florida is crazy. Yeah, so those are my 8-ish books. I'm not really counting a few of them because Mockingbird I would just keep counting every year, and Les Mis because I'm going to read the whole actual thing, which is like this thick of a book, and I will review it when I have finished reading that whole thing. So there's my reviews. I got a new tattoo today that shows my love of reading. And if you've read anything terrifying or amazing, let me know so I can check it out. And I will see you next month. Bye.